see what it is. Up on the stage. Going down the steps.
We're gonna get our show on the road. So if you can, shut up. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, but if you can, take a seat because we have a lot to do for you. We have a lot to show you, and we have a lot of really interesting people to introduce you to. We're here today, hosted by the Justice for All Coalition. If you haven't signed up, you can sign up. If you don't have a seat, we can always bring you more. We have these empty seats up here. I'm not sure why, but you can use one of them if you need to. But the reason we're here today... Oh, can we kill the music?
Hey, can we get everybody's attention real quick? Hey, can you clap once if you can hear me? Clap twice if you can hear me. Alright, clap 3 times if you can hear me.
Alright, great, awesome. Everybody, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out today. We're here part of the Justice for All Coalition. If you don't already know, we're a group of activists born out of Queensbridge Public Housing. And we're here because we're all concerned about what the future has for our neighborhood, like any responsible citizen would be. Now, there's a lot of changes that are coming not only to Western Queens, but to New York City as a whole. A lot of development that's coming our way. And the people who are here today are the ones who can truthfully participate in how that development unfolds. There's all sorts of choices that we have to make. When pieces of land are used for building, are we going to build a tall, luxury, skyscraping condo that really wealthy people can afford to live in? Or are we going to use that land to build open green space and parks that everybody can use? You know, when it comes to our transportation, are we going to build fancy trolleys that are going to run along routes where affluent people live? Or Do we invest our time and resources into building increased public transportation, like better subway lines and more express bus service? And where do those lines of transportation run? Do they run alongside routes where affluent people live? Or do they have a more comprehensive route that services low and middle income people as well? And when it comes to our small businesses or the commercial spaces in our neighborhoods, are we going to invite more corporate and chain franchises into our neighborhoods? Or do we want to foster small business growth and help build mom and pop shops that are locally owned by the people who live in the community where they sit? So all these choices are up to us to be made. And we can have any neighborhood that we imagine, any neighborhood that our heart's desire can be ours if we're willing to show up, roll up our sleeves, and get to work. Now, there's a lot of competing voices. Some people speak with their money and their political influence. Other people speak by bringing in large numbers of people and engaged citizens to speak up for what their needs are. So I think here today, we can move toward that latter approach. We have the numbers. We have a group of concerned, engaged citizens who are willing to speak up for what their interests are. And with that voice, we can build anything we desire. So the important thing is to know what the choices are in front of us and to make informed decisions on how we move forward. So that's why we're here today. We have a list of fascinating speakers, engaged citizens for you to listen to hear what their ideas are. And then based on that, hopefully we can move forward as political activists to build the neighborhood of our dreams. So let's begin our meeting by meeting one of the founders of the Justice for All Coalition, Sylvia White, a hard-working tenant in public housing. She's here today to introduce you all, and let's welcome her, and let's begin with an opening prayer. Thanks a lot, Sylvia.
For all the speakers tonight, I will be off to the side right here in that direction. I will have timekeeping cards to let folks know when they're to a minute, to 2 minutes, 30 seconds, just so that all of our speakers have the same amount of time and we can be respectful of each other. So please, for all the speakers, just make sure you're looking over here where I'll be with the time cards. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm going to pray in my faith, and if you have a faith you want to pray along with me, please do. Father God, in the name of Jesus, I ask you to come among us today, Lord God, with this gathering, this event, Lord God. I ask you to be a presence in this place. I ask you to bless us all as we come together under one accord, thinking on the things that need to be for our community. Lord God, I ask you to bless us now in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Make it short and sweet.
Okay, so with that, let's move on to a list of really fascinating people to meet you, to introduce you to. But to begin, if you don't already know, here in New York City, we have an amazing after-school program called the All-Stars Project. Yeah, I mean, give it up. This is one of those moments where, like, I can do my best to pretend like I have some semblance of talent, but when they come up, you see what real talent is. The All-Stars Project has a special offshoot program called the All-Stars Talent Network, whose objective is specifically to move their way into communities to help create that kind of outreach between their centrally located building in Manhattan out into the outer boroughs where their talent can help uplift local communities. So here we have the All-Stars Talent Network. Lead us through a little hip-hop and rap. Let's bring them up. Welcome all the All-Stars Talent Network. I'm going to get off, and we're going to let some real talent come up.
Yes, you have somebody from the All-Stars Talent Network that's going to explain about it a little bit more. Are they here? Jamel's not here, I know, so we have somebody else who's supposed to take his place.
So I wasn't initially planning to be doing this, so I'm hoping I do it justice. So I've been volunteering with the All Stars Talent Show Network for I think 3 years now, and it's a great opportunity to be able to come out into the communities and be able to see all the talent that these young people have. And in 3 weeks here, we will be hosting a talent showcase with young people from the Queens community, specifically the Astoria housing, the Ravenswood housing, and the Queensbridge housing. And for the past few weeks, we've been going out into the community to outreach to these communities for volunteers, for audience members, and specifically for performers. So this is a free event, so if anyone here is interested in becoming an audience member, becoming a volunteer to help with the performance, or know any young people who would be interested in the performance, we're handing out flyers, and we also have sign-up sheets that myself and Marian will have, and you can sign up with us and we'll reach out and let you know more information, but hopefully we'll see you all there.
Thanks so much. All right.
Yes, and there's one on the table.
All right. This is a real talent. Yeah? Awesome. Rock it out.
Hello. So, me and my sister are a group called KDW, and KDW stands for Kicking Down Walls. Now, usually we would do these 2 songs for kids, and there's not a lot of kids in this room. It's okay though. It's okay. Right. So these 2 songs one is called Swipe, and the second is called I Made It. So let's get it, huh? We do what? Which one? Alright. So the first one we're doing is called Swipe. Ready? Alright. Yeah. Okay. Huh? Hey. Hey. Yeah. Corey. Yeah. Okay. Swipe. We got that swipe. Kick it out to the mic. We don't do it just like you know you got it out to the night. Swipe. We got that swipe. Kick it out to the mic. We don't do it just like you know you got it out to the night. What up? They do. No kids. We don't do it just like you know we jumping out to the night. Swipe. We jumping that swipe, taking out to the mic. We don't do it just like you know we jumping out to the night. I just got the wrong. I find my ways so hard. Watch the way you go blind. I guess it was the time. Yo, swipe at the juice. Me and my sister the moves. I got the right tools and turn the fools into the people who rule. I started the left to the right. I started the left to the right. I started the left to the right. I started the right. I started the right. So I'ma tell you how to swipe. No one will be a mic. It's time to shine so bright. The whole way sound like so you swipe. We jumping that swipe. Taking out to the mic. We don't do it just like you know we jumping out to the night. Swipe. We jumping that swipe. Taking out to the mic. We don't do it just like you know we jumping out to the night. Okay, this is it. It's time to get lit. I'll say what bitches listen. The lyrics are great. It's like this way. We about to find out what you listen. S-W-I-P-E, like to see. This looks like what he means. S-W-I-P-E, like to see. This looks like what he means. Serious goals. We watch our phone. We put it on because we got this. And it's the young. We just gonna find it. Show some love. We got this. Swipe. got that sway, thinking I wasn't a fight. We don't do it cause it's slang, you know, we got my numbers in, hey. Sway, 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 sway. We got that sway, thinking I wasn't a fight. We don't do it cause it's slang, you know, we got my numbers in, hey. Yo, hey, yeah, okay.
So, if y'all like the song was fast, it's okay. But if y'all like what we got going on, y'all can follow us on Instagram at KDW_music. Once again, that was KDW_music. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give it up, y'all. Give it up, KDW. That's our show. Thanks so much. All right, speakers. You got to follow that now. But now we're going to get into a list of presenters to give us a bit more information about what we can come to expect here in our neighborhood, where we've been, and where we're going. Just before we begin and bring on some of our presenters today, we should acknowledge some very special people who are here with us this afternoon. State Senator Michael Gianaris is here. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Give a round of applause. He's busy, he's involved, and he took the time to come and see us today. We also have Claudia Koger from the Astoria Housing Tenants Association. Thank you so much, Claudia. Thank you so much for being here. And we also have Stacy from Public Advocate Letitia James' office. She's community outreach. Thank you, Stacy, for coming out so much. Everyone has busy lives, and the fact that everyone could come here and she's here? Right here. Oh, hey, Melissa Matzos. Okay, nice. From the Assemblywoman Silas Matzos. Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much. Our next speaker we have for now is from Socialist Alternative. Elgier Hawkins, who's going to speak to us a little bit about what we can expect in terms of a housing movement. Housing is a big part of the development that we're seeing coming our way. So let's talk about what to expect in terms of a housing movement. Elgier, thank you so much.
Hello, sisters and brothers. My name is Elgier Hawkins. I'm a member of Socialist Alternative who stands shoulder to shoulder with Justice for All, and who stood shoulder to shoulder with one of the most ferocious community housing coalitions Northern Manhattan is not for sale. In the community of Inwood that fought back against the pro-developer Wall Street rezoning plans sponsored by the Democratic Party City Councilor Yordanis Rodriguez, which was passed on August 8th. The full City Council decided that they will bring big box stores, luxury apartments, skyrocketing rents, and displacement to a rich and historic community of Inwood. The struggle to defend NYCHA and its residents has been a 30 to 40-year struggle on a federal and citywide basis. Both political parties, Republican and Democrat, has attacked and underfunded NYCHA. This is a man-made crisis. The struggle for affordable housing and the right to shelter is a question that haunts working people and the poor in this city, in this nation, and around the world. As a system of capitalism, real estate interests, and pro-developer corporations that look to profit over rezoning, land grabs, and gentrification. Stripping away people's homes, as we witnessed during the economic crisis of 07 and 08, and the foreclosure epidemic that washed away wealth for working people and the poor. We need a united mass housing movement made up of labor, of housing and community organizations, and working people in this city and on a statewide level to demand funding, construction, and 100% affordable housing. to you and I, we can't do that because where will the resources come from for such projects? They will say to you and I, our private-public partnership has been working well for the past 30 years. Our movement must reply, where there is a will, there is a way. And your private-public partnership has failed the 99% because you have 62,000 homeless people and families on the streets and in the shelters in a city they say never sleeps. As the Socialist City Councilor Shama Sawant from Seattle, Washington proposed earlier this year an Amazon tax. Amazon, the richest corporation on the planet, with the richest man on the planet, to tackle the crisis of affordability and homelessness in Seattle. The Amazon tax was passed, but within 1 week, the Democratic Party and the political establishment and Amazon overturned the decision. Sisters and brothers, we need a tax on Wall Street and the rich in this city. We need our own political parties that will run independent candidates that will fight and organize in the interests of working people and put housing and the right to shelter as a human right and a priority. 2019 is a crucial year as the rent laws are up for review in Albany. Let's make 2019 the year of the renters and NYCHA residents rising up, organizing. When we unite our struggle, from Inwood to Long Island City to Harlem to East New York and Lower East Side, we make a mighty fist that can smash the corporate agenda from Washington, D.C., from Albany, from City Hall, and the billionaire class and capitalism. No justice, no rent. No justice, no rent. No justice, no rent. No justice, no rent. Algier.
Wasn't on the agenda. It's like getting like a second dessert. Senator Giannaris.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a critically important meeting, which is why I want to thank Justice for All Coalition for bringing everyone together. I grew up in this neighborhood. I still live in this neighborhood. Stone's throw from this club. And I watched it go from a place of low-rise people, where the small mom and pops thrive, to buildings going up as far as the eye can see. And we know why that's happening. You just heard very powerful words about why that's happening. Because people think there's money to be made in this neighborhood. And those with money are all of a sudden discovering that Astoria, Long Island City, these places are places they want to build. When we were all here making this place good for families to live, they didn't want to have anything to do with us. They were on the other side of the river, because that's where the money was. Now they've decided we're desirable. But who's looking out for us is the question. And there was some reference to the rent laws expiring next year. There's a very important job I have to say. I also chair the committee, the campaign committee, that's trying to make sure Democrats take over. And you were right, LJ, you were right. Democrats and Republicans are part of the problem on this issue. So when someone comes before you and just tell you I'm a Democrat, that's not enough. You got to look at the person and wonder what they're about. That's why I'm here today. But I can promise you this. When the Democrats take over, and by the way, when we install the first woman of color as a leader of the Senate, which is what we're going to do in January, you can be rest assured we're going to make the rent laws better. We're going to deal with preferential rents. We're going to deal with the FCI program, which is a disaster. We're going to deal with the vacancy bonus and all the little tricks the landlords have put in the law to make themselves more money when they keep people out of their homes.
Do it.
I promise you that. And I promise you this as well. NYCHA is going to get the attention it deserves, and it's going to get the funding it deserves. You should also ask for people to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, and put their money where their mouth is, which is why I've decided I am not taking $1 of real estate money from my You've got to believe I'm going to do the right thing, to put your trust in me. And that's why I made that decision. I know you've got a long list of speakers, so I don't want to take too much time. I jumped in ahead of the program. But I wanted to assure you that you have some help coming. If we're successful in 10 days, there's some help coming in January at the state senate and the state level. Just bear with us and we'll get there together. We'll keep this neighborhood as good as we want it to be. Thank you very much.
Next, we have a special speaker who can speak firsthand on what displacement really feels like. From Queens Neighborhood United, we have Jay Koo, who was living in the Lower East Side and was physically and individually replaced there. He can speak about his experience and give us some information about what we might expect to happen here in Western Queens. Thank you so much, Jay Koo.
To start off, my name is Jay Koo. And before I was a Queens resident, I was a NYCHA resident first. Born and raised in Valadics houses in the Lower East Side. I stand before you as a displaced resident of the Lower East Side, bearing a message, a ghost of Christian's past, if you would. If we do not learn from our past, then we are doomed to repeat them. And I'll break it down like this. In 2012, the city announced the Exodus Crossing project in the Lower East Side, which would include 1,000 units of new housing in the Lower East Side. NYCHA residents and local groups had different goals. Some wanted jobs, some wanted parks, some wanted 100% affordable housing. We were not unified like what we see here in Justice for All Coalition. So some of us began negotiating privately behind closed doors. This resulted in a few concessions for the community, resulted in a promise of jobs for local residents, a promise that at least a half of the units, 500 to be exact, will be given to the community. We learned the hard way that these developers' promises were not legally binding. 6 years later, less than 10% of the jobs went back to the local residents. And the 500 affordable units were not affordable at all. You had to make $45,000 to $90,000 for a family of 3 to live in those units. And at market rate, each of the units were $4,000 for 1 bedroom. With the rising rents in the Lower East Side, I came to Queens. I was determined not to live through the same trauma, the same mistakes of being displaced. I joined Queens Neighborhoods United, a grassroots group that was founded in Jackson Heights, believing in the fundamentals of generating radical collaboration, community self-determination, and to protect the rich diversity of working-class immigrant communities that Queens is known for. QNU, Queens Neighborhood United, is the first grassroots organization that's to defeat the expansion of a business improvement district nationally. Business improvement districts are notoriously known for erecting small business displacement corporate chain stores. Most recently, we led a campaign to defeat the Target and the luxury housing that was coming to Jackson Heights. It was an uphill battle because Councilmember Moya eventually endorsed the project. So we went on the offense. QNU first did by exposing Councilmember Moya and other politicians from taking money from the real estate industry. Afterwards, we refused to meet with Councilmember Moya because quite often when you meet with these elected officials behind closed doors, they give you empty promises and they use it as a divisive tactic to say they give you a promise, so that's when infighting ensues. So we said no private meetings, hold a town hall, discuss the public, a public service, recorded every interaction. We bird dogged. We worked with the seniors to go to any event that he attended, called him out, recorded, put it on Facebook, and with declining public presence, he caved in. He asked the developers to now up the ante, create more affordable housing, and resubmit the bid.
Of course, the developers said no, and the project was defeated. That deserves a round of applause. We also know that we told Moya easily, if he followed the footsteps of Councilmember Van Bramer, who gave away the land rights to 5 Points and was zoning, he essentially would do the same thing as Van Bramer. Nothing is legally binding when these rezoning happen. So I'm going to conclude this by, if you look at these two vignettes, we can all come to a conclusion that in order to achieve victory, we cannot be easily divided and conquered by a few crumbs. A few crumbs does not keep a stomach full, and we know that as NYCHA residents at a young age. Let us remember that a closed mouth never gets fed. So they're going to hear us today, loud and proud. We stand here as Queens Neighborhoods United, saying that we don't want justice for few, justice for one, we want justice for all.
One thing to hear from analysts, it's another thing to hear from someone who lived it. Thank you, Jay Koo. We've also got Rob Todoro from Jimmy Van Bramer's office here. Thank you, Rob. Awesome. This man who came to spend time with us. Okay, next up. A little nervous. We have a very special activist here. Now, at some point, someone, somewhere, mentions the name of our next speaker. If you don't know her name yet, I guarantee you're going to hear it in coming weeks. People are talking about her coast to coast, literally. She recently shocked the political world by winning a very competitive election against an incumbent politician who had way more money, way more political connections, way more influence than she had. But she won that election with really little more than sheer determination and a message of equality and justice for all. So please welcome me, warmly welcome, the Democratic nominee for representative of New York's 14th Congressional District, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez!
Cheers to Jay, to Senator Gennard, thank you to everyone who's out here today. Oh, I got a microphone, cool. Thank you everyone, because really this is what it's all about. What we always talked about on June 26th was that this election, this November, June 26th, is not about me, it's about we. It's about what we're going to do and accomplish together. Because that, we will never get advocacy for our communities, and we will never get things done for our communities unless the community itself is doing it. Unless the community itself is doing it. I often say that what we're here to do, even when we get put into positions as an elected official, first of all, what I like to think of is that this position is not as an elected official, but my job is to be a public servant. That is my job first and foremost, is to be a public servant and to serve this community and our needs. And to me, what that means is that we have to see housing first and foremost as a human right. It's a human right. It should not be treated first and foremost as a for-profit commodity as it has been. We are at a point in our city where there are 3 empty luxury apartments for every 1 person experiencing homelessness. That is a system that does not work. That is a proof of system failure. And the only way that we're going to turn this ship around is by our communities. You know, Jay used a very important term, self-determination. When our communities determine for themselves what we want, what is right for us, what is good, what is fully participating, when we all fully participate in that process, that's when we get the representation, and that is when we get the solutions that we so desperately deserve. Housing, first and foremost, is a human right, and when we do that, we have to legislate for that on every level. this issue, one of the things that makes housing so complex is because it requires collaboration from many different types of government. You have city council working on rezonings, you have state legislators and assembly just talking about tax breaks and things like MCIs, and then on a federal level, we have even our tax system that is designed to really incentivize and help development for the wealthy instead of the poor, the working class, and middle class communities. And so first and foremost, what this is going to need politically is divestment from luxury real estate developers' financial. That's why we're so proud in our campaign to run without any corporate money whatsoever. And I want to applaud Senator Gianaris for divesting from luxury real estate developers. That's no joke. Y'all, that is no joke in New York City, because we see, we often see, and LG's brought up this point, that our issues are not left and right. Our issues are not Democrat or Republican. They're not left and right. They're top and down. That's what our issues are about. They're about top and down. And sometimes, depending on where you will go, that top may be financed by gun manufacturers, may be financed by private prison corporations, but sometimes it's financed by fossil fuel industries, sometimes it's financed by luxury real estate developers, and any industry that profits off of the despair of working people should not be contributing to our political process. So that's step one. When we can get elected without that money, that is one of the most powerful shifts that we can make in our political and community processes. And on June 26th, when we won, we were outspent 18 to 1. 18 to 1. And then even after that, even after we had a whole surge of fundraising, we were still outspent 10 to 1. So we closed it 10 to 1. And we won anyway. We won anyway. But the only reason we won anyway is because everyday people, like the people in this room, decided to pay attention and bring their families and friends to the polls and talk to their neighbors and talk to their trusted ones, talk to their loved ones about the issues, saying this time we need to step it up, and this time now is the time for us to change. That is how we were able to defeat all of the odds. We made a new playbook. This community made a new playbook for how we can move forward. There is no reason we should have won on June 26th. You're never supposed to win the first time you run for office. You're never supposed to win the first time you run for office. You're never supposed to win while you're outspent, let alone outspent 18 to 1. You're never supposed to win when you're running against an incumbent and unseating an incumbent that has incumbency has a re-election rate of 97%. You're never supposed to win when you're speaking truth to power, when you're saying that healthcare should be a human right, as housing, as education, that every American should be paid a living wage, that no human is illegal, that the war on drugs is immoral. You're not supposed to win saying those things. But when our community decides to support those things, then we can win. But the only way we do that is with shoe leather. The only way we do that. That's why it's so important that we vote, yes, but voting is not enough. Voting will never be enough. It will never be enough. Voting is like flossing. It's like hygiene. You gotta do it so your teeth don't fall out, But if you want to be truly, fully healthy, we need to be exercising the muscles of community organization. One is not a replacement for the other. One is not a replacement for the other. I wish voting was like set it and forget it, but it's not. It's not. We have to stay on it. We have to continue to advocate for our needs. And as community leaders and as people residing in the community, you are the front line of knowing when something is changing and when something is happening. And it's important that we're always communicating, we're organizing. So let's thank all of our organizers that are here today, because God bless y'all. This is so incredibly important. And again, there's some real critical things that we're going to have to do, moving forward when we talk about what's going on a federal level. We have something in the zone of $200 billion that goes into investment in housing. But you would never know that because most of that investment goes into tax breaks for folks who are getting second homes or fancy places. And what we really need to do is re-divert what that looks like and making sure that we're not only using our tax codes, but that we're investing in NYCHA, that we're rebuilding in our infrastructure, that we're fighting against the privatization of the crown jewels of public good. Yeah. NYCHA is not broken. NYCHA is not something that should be thrown away. It's something that needs to be invested in. And it has been sabotaged for decades with the divestment of our public funds into NYCHA. NYCHA should be the crown jewel and a huge example of what happens when society decides to make housing a priority for working people. And we can get there again. We can get there again. I look forward to getting there with you all. So thank you all so very much. And make sure you vote November 6th. Make sure you text a friend. Really important. And I think, was there like a Q&A session in this part? Oh, so I'm just going to take a few questions if there are any questions around here. If not, we can just keep rolling with the program. But if there's any other questions that I can address in the moment, let me know. Yes?
This may sound like some sort of attack, but it's not. I noticed that when one gets into office, you're asked for hundreds of thousands of dollars. How can you get that money if you don't take from if you were to get into office? What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Where is the money?
Yes, so that money that comes from that gets to communities does not usually come from corporations that's given to the actual community. It usually comes through budgetary amendments.
I don't mean that. I mean you personally would be done as a member of Congress. You're supposed to contribute to the party in order to get votes.
Ah, I see. Oh, contribute to like the DCCC and all that stuff.
How will you do that?
So for what we actually do and what we've done this summer is that we actually contribute and fundraise for other candidates directly. And instead of trying to put it through some middleman type of organization, which they usually have their own consultants and all of these things, we'll give directly to those folks. So we've helped folks like Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, James Thompson, and actually this summer in grassroots small dollar donations, we've raised well over $100,000 for other Democratic candidates across the country. So it works.
Okay, I have one other question. I'll be really quick. In our neighborhood of Sunnyside, Woodside, we're not divided. 90% of us don't want the so-called bike lanes. It's not the bike lanes. I ride a bike. I love bikes. It's called the road diet. It's hurting every business, every church, every school. So I believe that TA kind of talked to you first, and I feel like you've thrown us on the heap, and I would like a more nuanced response about so-called bike lanes. That means getting rid of working people's cars and businesses, clients.
Yeah, and this bike lane issue is heated. Honestly, it was the most controversial issue of the entire campaign. So first and foremost, the bike lanes are primarily under the city jurisdiction. So I tend to look at this from just a federal level. On a broad stroke, I think that we need to start developing more biking infrastructure because we need to get to 100% renewable energy. Our children and our lives depend on it. So that's on a broad stroke. It's really important. Granted, how those bike lanes are placed and where they are placed to make sure that they are conducive, safe, and respectful to the community is a conversation that is part of that aspect of self-determination that we're all talking about. So again, I think that while I don't have approval over which specific roads get these bike lanes, I do think that we need to start making some of these decisions pretty quickly as well. And frankly, we're going to have to pay a price. We ignored climate change for so long that we're either going to pay the price now or we are going to pay the price when we have a 5-foot sea level rise going into Ditmars. And so my whole perspective on these things in general is that just like with health, we can either work out and exercise, and it's a pain in the butt when you wake up at 6 a.m. and doing it, or you wait and you're sick in 5-10 years. So for me, I think that we got to kind of just like wake up at 6 a.m. and put some of these things and do some things that we don't like sometimes. But again, with that placement, it has to be a process of self-determination, and we all need to kind of come to that realization. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Very simple question, very simple tenet. All citizens vote in all elections. All citizens vote in all elections. I choose to be an independent. I've been an independent for 20 years. And it's a very simple fact that if everyone does not have the opportunity to engage in the process, you get what we have now. Understand this doesn't have a damn thing to do with left, right, liberal, conservative. This has to do with allowing everyone unfettered access to the ballot box. My question to you and other elected officials that are here present, would you be interested in engaging in a dialogue where we see that New York State as open primaries, allowing everyone to access the ballot box? Everyone loves the parks, the Constitution, taxation without representation. I can't think of anything more insipid than allowing my taxes to go to run elections, and I'm not even able to take part in that process. So my question for you and for the other elected officials, would you be interested in a dialogue that would have non-partisan elections in this state and across the country? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only am I open to that dialogue, I'm supportive of open primaries in New York State. In fact, a lot of people don't know that New York is actually amongst one of the worst states when it comes to voter turnout and voter laws in the entire country.
49.
Yeah, 49. In 2016, we had the second lowest turnout, second only to Louisiana, for the primaries, for the presidential primaries, in the year where Donald Trump was running for president. And there's a reason for that. It's because New York State is one of the only states that does not have mail-in voting, early ballots. We don't have same-day voter registration. We're the only state in the country that separates federal from state primaries. And what that does is that it creates something known as voter fatigue. By the end of this year, we will have had 4 elections in New York. This year, we have a special election, the federal primary, the state primary, and the general election. So if you feel tired, you should feel tired of voting. If it feels like there's constantly an election going on, because there is constantly an election going on. It is outrageous to me that we spend so many resources holding 4 elections a year, and then we say we don't have the money for mail-in ballots or early voting or any of that stuff. 40%, we have 3 million independent voters in New York State. 3 million in the state. 40% of all voters in the United States are independent or unaffiliated voters. 43. So it's the largest, that is more than registered as either Democrat or Republican. And so I think that democracy works best when we are all represented, when we can all participate in our outcomes. And so I'm absolutely, open to that. I know there's a lot of diversity of thought in the Democratic Party as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I personally think open primaries are a good thing, and I am personally supportive of it.
Bravo!
Thank you. One more question? Do you have any more? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Claudia Cover. I'm the Resident Association President for Astoria House. And you did speak on Niger and public housing. I'm a resident in Astoria houses for the last 63 years of my life. And I've seen Niger in its good, bad, and indifferent days. And I'm an activist on behalf of the people in Astoria houses. The road has been rough in the past 20 years, for Asbury Houses, 20, 30 years, we've been neglected in a lot of different ways, and it bare amenities. I congratulate my senator here, who most certainly stand with us strongly, our councilman, and also our fellow youth, for all of your support in Northwestern Queens, as well as Carol Maloney and now Assemblywoman Kathy Golden. They've been working on behalf of us, but even with that, with the deteriorations of the infrastructures throughout Niger, throughout the state of New York, throughout the city of New York, we are now sitting in a hole where our people are crying out daily for hot water and etc. We want to make sure that who we elect is going to be standing with our already standing officials, that they too will be on board 100%, because this is the dying generation. Our young people, they call it next generation. They're looking at the next generation, but it's next generations that's sitting on the ground in public housing. And we just want to make sure that when people stand before us and ask us for our votes, because we turn out our votes in Asbury Houses, and we want to make sure that you're going to be standing strong with us and with our already elected officials. And we want to say, want you to say yes to that today.
Absolutely, yes. It's proud to I'm proud to say that we absolutely, and in our district it's very important because we've got proximate houses. We're out in Pelham Bay as well, and even in Woodside too. And what is so important and what is so special about NYCHA communities is that you have residents and we have community members that have been there for decades, for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. That has a special value to community, especially in a time and an era here. We're living in a time in New York City where people will live a place 2 years and then they move, either because of rising rents or just because of the culture of the city, but it hasn't always been that way. Now, I come from a third-generation Bronx family, and there's a lot of value to making sure that we are tending to and caring for communities that have been here for a long time, and also welcoming communities that are either moving here for the first time as immigrants or starting their stories, because it has always been that mix. But in terms of not just being an ally of NYCHA and defending NYCHA, but expanding the investment that we are making into our facilities is so incredibly important. So thank you for asking that question.
Thank you so much. That is, you're a breath of fresh air, Alexandria. I woke up this morning, it was gloomy, it was raining. Now I'm going to bed feeling happy and hopeful. Thank you so much. We're going to continue now. We're talking about, this is a great substantive and constructive conversation we're having about how we build our neighborhoods. We've heard about what displacement does, firsthand perspective from J.Q. We heard about a housing movement, firsthand from Algier. Let's talk about what policing looks like in our ideal neighborhood. Please join me in welcoming now, also from Democratic Socialists of America, Jonathan Bailey, to talk about housing and policing.
So I discovered the perfect thing to pick my stage fright in overdrive is have me follow Algier, Jay, and Alexandria. So I'm here with Democratic Socialists of America, and we as socialists, we bring an analysis that recognizes capitalism being used as a tool to exploit and to oppress Black, brown, and working class people in America. For us, we recognize gentrification. I advocate that we recognize Oh, I'm still quiet? Oh, Sam. Okay, I advocate that we recognize gentrification as the issue it is. It's colonialism. Gentrification is colonialism on the neighborhood level. And in recognizing this, we have to see, like, why? Who are the perpetuators of this colonialism? We have to recognize how real estate development interests are fundamentally against the interests of the people who are subjected to that colonialism. And this is an issue because our politicians, and more importantly, the corporations that fund them, have the actual financial interest in people's displacement and being able to privatize things like NYCHA and to really find just ways in which to commodify everything that is belongs to the people. So that's like a lot to deal with, right? So for me, I very much advocate for, actually I'm checking what I do advocate for. There's very much two parts of this. There's a housing part. There's the reason why 35,000 people in NYCHA right now don't have heat. That is actually a manifestation of those interests. And so there's really important for us to recognize that. But there's also the issue of how this affects our criminal legal system. So when we see so many police on the block, and we see all of our people being pushed over to rikers, and we see cash bail being used as a barrier to let for people to be able to maintain their apartments, we have to recognize that all of this ties in to the financial interest of displacing people. So, the question of what do we do about this? Well, I got 4 things for you. So first, I want to see you get involved with any kind of housing organization, but especially one that recognizes the fundamental interests of people and how that's tied to socialism. It's important to recognize how there's an actual class antagonism and bring that analysis to your housing efforts. There's also there's a big effort right now to end cash bail and to prevent the new jails that are being you can connect to Jose Cabrera, who's telling me to get off, and to get connected to that effort. It's important to recognize that if they build the jails, they'll build them, and that is directly tied. I would also advocate that you get involved with the DA race in Queens coming up to this next year. Right now we're talking about how does this affect housing issues, and it's really important to recognize. And finally, there's a campaign for an elected civilian review board. Right now we recognize that police abuse, right now it just goes unchecked. And that's a horrible thing to have, and really makes clear the relationship between the people and the police. So an elected civilian review board would ensure that we get to elect the people that sit on the board that investigate police and that their decisions are binding. That way it's no longer just a decision of the police commissioner to say, hey, like, maybe, but maybe you just might take some days off, yeah? So, please talk to me for that, and I'm waiting for somebody to grab and take the microphone from me.
Jonathan, if you were suffering stage fright, you could have told me. You were great. I wish I could handle stage fright that well. Thank you. We're going to move on. We have another representative from the Democratic Socialists of America who's actually been working specifically with the Housing Working Group. I came to know him over a year ago. Maybe it's been 2 years ago now. He's been working on it a long time, and he can offer a little bit of his insight on where we can expect the socialist perspective of housing to take us. Please welcome Brian Cahill.
Hey folks, how you doing? My name is Brian Cahill. I'm with the Queens Housing Working Group of the Democratic Socialists of America. I am here in solidarity with everybody being squeezed, whether it's by their landlord or through the criminal systemic underfunding of NYCHA. We're socialists because we believe housing is a human right. And public housing is the only way to get there. The underfunding of public housing is theft. The privatization of public housing is theft. As long as we keep giving public money to private landlords, there will always be families going homeless. We believe it's time to stop funding parasitic landlords and use that public money to build public housing. Not only do we need to take NYCHA funding even higher than it was in the 1970s, but we need to actively reacquire the land that should be housing people but isn't. Folks, over the last 30 years, over my lifetime, the privatization of public housing, the decontrolling of rent-controlled apartments in this city, has been the largest transfer of property rights in human history. When they tell you that reacquiring what should have been public land all along and making that the roofs over families' heads, over working people's heads, when they tell you that's wealth redistribution, you tell them that we're finally correcting the wealth redistribution that's been going on for the last century and a half or longer. How do we get there? There's a different way, a few different ways. We campaign for and we elect candidates, one that don't take a cent of money from landlords and developers. So that we, not developers, can hold them accountable. And when electoral strategies don't cut it, we take to the streets. Because these elected officials, they have real power. They might not always listen to you as a constituent, but they're soft. The vast majority of them, they don't know what it's like to live in precarious housing. They don't know what it's like to feel insecure in their own homes. Folks, hopefully it won't happen, but you might have to give them a taste of it so that they can see that they have to lobby for your rights, for your right to housing. That's why on this next Thursday, November 15th, we, the DSA, and tenants from across the state are marching on the Rent Stabilization Association, the landlord lobbyists in Wall Street. We are marching on them. Next summer, the people have mentioned already, the rent stabilization laws are expiring. We're marching on Albany to get those laws, those rights, not just for a few tenants, for all tenants across the state and soon the country. Again, we believe housing is a human right. Public housing, like it or not, is the only way to get there. If you want to see them be a reality, come see us, take a flyer. Thank you very much.
Ryan, thank you so much. There's no question about the definition of determination. You've been doing this for years, and obviously you have a vision where you're going forward. Thank you so much for working so hard. Thank you. Now, probably what everyone's thinking is like, can I please see some more rap? Yes, you can. All Star Talent Network!
Hello again. So, now the second song that we were going to do earlier, we're going to do now. And this song, and this song is called I Made It.
Yeah. I guess like maybe like a lot of kids have dreams, and our song is basically saying like how we made it or how we achieved our dreams.
Exactly. So we can play it whenever you're ready. Hey. Alright, yeah. Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Hey. Hey. You know what I'm saying? Okay. We're standing on our ground. We didn't always find to shine. We didn't know when they popped out. My whole life was there. I can't believe what I'm saying.
made a mommy, I made it. On my way was a struggle, had to come home to my soul, had to hustle. I moved quiet through the jungle, people was waiting to see me in trouble. But I was leaving them like Goku. They expect to see those moves, the people see what you go through. They be so shy, man, I told you. And now I'm chilling in cigarettes. Yeah, I'm pulling up on my nerve. Now I'm more flash, pocket sauce, cash, I'm a dummy, some glitter. I came up, I can't stop it. When I see the top, I'ma top it. I'm feeling like a little rocket, and I got the keys to all my rocket. Yeah. Okay. I picked up the phone and they said I was famous. I'm up at the top and I'm fading. I sit with the haters, that's hating. Young brother celebrating. I gotta say congratulations. They mad cause I made it. I made it. Traveling to all these places. See a bunch of different faces. Wait, you ready? You ready? Okay.
They say I ain't gon' make it, but on the beat, got the haters fading. Now people going crazy, killing again, got everyone hazy. Worry about you, I don't worry about me. Making that money and
okay.
Haters keep creeping, they killing me.
Look, mama.
I'm paying no way, so they gonna cheat. Now I'm so down.
Stand your ground.
Believe in yourself. Stand up on the crowd. Keep better, you'll see me. Feel it,
okay.
Keep on with it, pop with the beats.
See, I made it with chosen enemies. Yo. Yeah. We did. So, all our songs have a message, you know? So we always deal with the positivity. That's what we want to play. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. I made it. I picked up the phone and they said I was famous. So I'm at the top and I'm fading it. I sit with the haters, I'm hating it. Young brother celebrating. I gotta say congratulations. They mad cause I made it. Traveling to all these places. See a bunch of different faces. We take this time for the taking. Young boys sick of making. I can't believe what I'm saying. I made it, mommy, I made it. Yeah. I made it, mommy, I made it. Yeah. I made it, daddy, we made it. Yeah. We made it, daddy, we made it. We made a world, yeah, we made it. Thank you.
AEW, y'all. Give it up, y'all. Yeah. AEW.
Yes. Do you have any spots in your entourage? Like guys with yellow shirts? I'll join in. All right. Let me see. Only because I didn't have the agenda memorized. Where we go next? Okay. Oh no, hold on. Act specialty. I don't know. You know this is happening because we have a very, very special guest, State Assembly representative.
Sorry. Arbella Samotas, you please tell us.
This is beautiful. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. I can't tell you how inspiring this is that we are all assembled here talking about really what Alexandria said is a human right. Housing is not a commodity for sale. It is everybody's human right. It is your human right, it is your human right, it is my human right, it is your human right. What we're talking about is really common sense. You know, I used to work with somebody a long time ago and she used to say, common sense is not so common. I used to laugh at that. And as I started getting along in my career, I started realizing how much truth there was in that very simple statement. You know, housing is a right. We should not displace the communities that have made this borough, this city, and this state what it is. We should not allow displacement. We should have a system of government that encourages everyone to vote.
Amen.
It's not hard, it's not rocket science. It is common sense. It is something that we all need to do so that we as a society can advance. My daughter, who's 6 years old, can feel proud of what her mom does when she spends 6 months of the year up in Albany. So she is proud about what we all do. Again, I want to thank you for organizing this beautiful rally. Justice for All, you are speaking truth to power, but really you're giving us hope. When I see the election results and see how many new voters came out to those polls, it is inspiring. We have to make sure that this doesn't end in June, that we continue in November, and we continue each and every election. I thank you all for being here. I will continue in the assembly, up in Albany, the assembly, we fight for Niger, we really fight for public housing, and we're going to continue to do so. And hopefully, when the Senate becomes blue and we have partners, we're finally going to see all of those actually become a reality. Michael made pledge that he will not be taking any real estate money. Well, guess what? Neither will I. I remember when my family tells me when they immigrated to this country, when I was just an infant, they familial status. In other words, if you had a family, your landlord can discriminate against you. They wouldn't give you an apartment. My parents tell me the story, my father tells me the story about going from, building to building to building to find a place to house his family, to have his 2 young children. I was 6 months old, my brother was 2 years old, just to have a place to live. And they got rejected. Now familial status, it's covered under Title VII, so you can't discriminate against somebody because they have a family, but you can still discriminate against somebody because they're working class. We cannot allow that. We have to make sure that we're organized and that we fight for fair housing, something that's affordable so everybody can go and work and live. It's a human right. Thank you all very much.
Okay, Representative Simosas, thank you so much.
We know you're busy. Thank you so much. The fact that you give us your attention and time is without doubt uplifting. Thank you so much. Thank you. You may have also heard there's this stat that gets thrown around that the fastest developing neighborhood in the United States of America, not the fastest developing neighborhood in New York City or New York State, but in the United States of America is right across the bridge, Long Island City. There's more development going up there than in any neighborhood in our country. For who? Yeah, good question, good question. We have a resident from Long Island City, longtime resident for 40 years. He's a member of the Long Island City Coalition, and he can tell us a bit about his first-hand experience in that neighborhood, what he's seen over 40 years. Please welcome, be here today, Ernie Brooks.
Thank you. And thank you to Justice for All for asking me to come from all the way on the other side of the bridge. And I have to say, things aren't different on both sides of the bridge. They're building a lot more of those disgusting luxury towers there. I live on the corner of 44th Drive and Vernon Boulevard in an old loft building. Fortunately, it's rent stabilized after a fight of many years against the landlord. Because I would, as a part-time teacher and musician, I would not be able to afford to live in that neighborhood. I've seen artists, I've seen longtime residents being forced out, and I guess we should think it's surprising somewhere when our country is now being run by a totally corrupt, criminal real estate player. So I guess I can't say that before he was elected, there wasn't a lot of the same problems. But what we have to fight for, I think, in this area, first of all, is to get our elected officials on board with a call that's already been made by our Assemblywoman Catherine Nolan, which is for a total moratorium on new residential construction, maybe other than some small ones, and we can build more schools if the money is there for that. But to call for a moratorium on all new large-scale residential construction until there is comprehensive zoning in place for for Astoria and Long Island City, taken as a whole. Because it makes no sense what they're doing. In our building, when there's a little bit of rain, immediately the street drains fill up. And then you have combined sewage and wastewater overflow, which goes into the East River, which makes it almost, okay, it's hard to get to a car. It backs up in the freight elevator of our old building, and it stinks. And this is going to happen increasingly throughout Long Island City. There was daycare centers closed in July when it rained. Kids were sent home because the toilets didn't work. They were overflowing. And why is this? Because the luxury developers want to build their buildings, take the money, and run. They don't want to come up with the money for infrastructure. I asked the architects responsible for the enormous new development being planned by the Blaxall family near where I live. And the architect had no idea when the sewers were going to be rebuilt. They had no idea when there's going to be improvement in the transportation. They had no idea about how they were going to provide the needed schools. So I just want to say, and also what's angering about that is increasing. I mean, I went through the fight in the 60s. And we were talking about, I was part of SDS, and we were fighting for justice and housing in Boston. But the struggle, it really is one for justice. We don't want to have two Long Island cities, one south of the bridge, which is luxury towers. Up here where you have the public housing, where you have decaying schools, even, I'd say, more dilapidated infrastructure. And it really is a struggle for equality, for justice. And I want to end on just showing this thing, which is from the Financial Times of October 12th, which shows this woman who is apparently the CEO of one of the largest real estate investment firms. And it's about having spinach, ravioli, and wine with Alicia Glenn, where they discussed what they were going to do about the zoning. And if anybody reads this, the way they ended up was saying, well, the real estate said, well, we won the war. The next day, we got approval for the Chase Bank, my client, to build a bigger building in the site we plan to build. This is not the way decisions about housing, which is, as Alexandria said, should be a right for all. That's not how it should be done. We expect our city in this state, which is liberal, and our city, which is liberal, to do better than what the federal government, under the control of the Republicans, is trying to do to the country, which is to divide us. We want to be together, and we want what we should have. And it starts locally. Go to zoning meetings, go to scoping meetings, go to your community board. Weigh in on these issues. So of course, the most important thing is to get out on the 6th and vote and do what we can. Thank Mike for getting rid of most of the IDC, which has kept us from being as good a state as we can be. And hopefully many others will, Gretchen Shirley out in Long Island, Delgado upstate, canvass, write to people in those districts, because we want to take back that. Otherwise, we're doomed. Thank you.
Thank you. You are the epitome of engaged citizen. I know you'd rather be teaching music, your neighborhood's in crisis, you roll up your sleeves and you get to work. It does not go overlooked. Thank you, Larry. Thank you so much. Oh man, now this is where I get nervous again a little bit. I want to introduce you to a man who's really been a mentor to me for the last year or so. We have a question about what kinds of shops and stores we're going to put into our neighborhoods. We could have those fancy corporate stores that are owned by some borderline oligarch, I guess, in some corporate office somewhere outside the city. Or you could have a locally owned business, owned by the very mom and pop who are your neighbors, who maybe price a little bit more fairly and create a bit more of a communal atmosphere in their neighborhood. It could go either way, but one individual here in New York City who actually isn't even a business owner but loves small businesses that much has been on a campaign to help protect small businesses here in New York City. He's part of an organization called Friends of the Small Business and Job Survival Act. He's a professor of history at Columbia University, and when he's not busy writing numerous books, he's out advocating for the strength and prosperity of small businesses. So please join me in welcoming an amazing progressive voice, a mentor to me and other small business owners all around the city, Professor David Eisenbach!
Before I start talking about the Small Business Job Survival Act, I just want to raise a moment of silence for a bit of news that I saw on the way over here. There was a shooting in a synagogue in Pittsburgh. 12 people were killed. And so let's all just take a minute, let's bring it down a little bit, and let's just have a moment of silence for a second. Now, as a historian, I can tell you, and it's something you already know, there's something really ugly going on right now in America.
That's right.
And as a historian, I can tell you, it's going to get uglier. This is not caused by Donald Trump. He's just a symptom of something bigger. And it gets to the economic injustice of what our society has become. And this is a long-term trend. You could trace it back decades. When you have a 1% or a 0.1% of the population taking all the wealth, when you have a situation in America or in New York where it doesn't matter how hard you work, where you could even have a successful small business, but the landlord wouldn't even renew your lease because he's figured out a way to make more money not renting the space than renting it. Where real estate speculation has gotten so insane that we have a phenomenon of high rent flight. It looks like it's the 1930s or the 70s out there, but allegedly, there's a lot of money out there. Well, this is a problem. This is an economic problem that is now tearing us apart, literally. We are at each other's throats. The reason why I embrace the Small Business Job Survival Act is because I know that as a society, this is essential. New York City for 400 years has been built on the proposition that you can come here and you can try out your dream, try out your business. And there was a landlord somewhere, and he was willing to rent his space to you, and he didn't care where you were from, or what language you spoke, or what food you served in your space. All you had to do was pay the rent. But things have gotten out of whack. The bill that I've been pushing for and fighting for and making sure that we got a speaker who is willing to give us a public hearing, which we got on Monday. The reason why we need this bill is because we'll give small businesses a chance.